DJI release updates and rumors on Canadian Drone Hub. Got that coming up next. This morning I was a guest on Canadian Drone Hub. As always, it's a great place to come, bring your cup of coffee, sit back, relax, and to talk about drones. I gave my weekly DJI update along with several other items including DJI Action Camera rumors, DJI Osmo Pocket Pro rumors, DJI Inspire 3 leak, DJI Spark Pro update, DJI Hybrid Drone update, DJI getting into the FPV market, DJI Mavic 2 Enterprise and Enterprise dual cameras, the Parrot Anafi Thermal, the Parrot Anafi, the Xdynamics Evolve, and much more. So let's go ahead and roll that clip right now.
Okay. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
I'll shoot him the link.
Guys.
Bill.
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 How's it going, guys?
Bill.
It's definitely not a good day to fly here in Florida.
No, I know you have been having storms up there since yesterday.
Dang.
We got some high wind today, so
No go, huh?
yeah.
Roadkill in the house. Hey, Roadkill.
Oh. Kim, are you sick? Rolling. What's that? Kim, are you sick? You don't want to go there. A little off. I'm okay.
Bill, have you got any drone news for us?
Yeah, I sure do. I got lots of news here this morning. First off,
Okay.
sure do.
You're listening to feedback, Bill.
Yeah, I got it. I took care of that. Yeah, I do have some drone news here. First off, you probably, I'm sure Bill Thomas probably talked to you guys. We had on Curtis Dart and the Drone Owners Network this week on Bill's show. And we talked about one of the questions that we asked. There's a lot of hubbub about DJI coming out with an action cam. Well, it's our opinion from everything that we've heard that they're not coming out with an action cam, but they're going to come out with an upgraded DJI Osmo Pocket with a 1-inch sensor. Now, I also heard from another contact of mine who's big in the camera industry. In fact, he works for Discovery Network, and he's telling me the same thing. And I'm hearing that from several of my other contacts. So they're saying that that's the kind of camera that they're going to be coming out with here, because there was a lot of hubbub about whether or not DJI was, about another camera coming out, and everybody said, well, no, it was this big complex, kind of camera that's probably going to cost about $30,000 or $40,000.
Oh my
And
God.
said, no, it's not that. They said it's a smaller one, user friendly and consumer friendly. So I'm figuring, I did some checking, and this is what I came up with. So, and I put out a video on this, and the video was from our feed from the other night, and Curtis did a lot of the talking about it. And what he said makes sense, because what he did was he went over, the cycles in which DJI releases drones, like how they upgraded from a Phantom 4 to a Phantom 4 Advanced to a Phantom 4 Pro, and the release dates and things like that. And they're very cyclical, and it's very similar. So that's the first bit of news that I have. The second bit of news that I have is this. The other night on Ken Heron's show, he had on Greg Kunert from Oz by Drone. And Greg was over at a DJI store over in Seoul, Korea. And as he was walking through the store, Greg was saying, well, we can take a look at the Inspire 1, Inspire 2, and Inspire 3. So this was a big piece of news, because I had been talking about it, and all my contacts are saying, yes, they're coming out with an Inspire 3, that it's going to be probably towards the latter part of this year is what I'm hearing. It's going to be smaller. It's going to be faster. It's going to have better battery capacity. It's going to have better sensors, better camera options will be available for it, or is everything that I know. Also, open up your checkbook a little more, because it is going to cost a lot more from what I'm hearing. So that, that was a piece of news that dropped the other night, which which really kind of, it did not catch me off guard. I knew it was coming. I just don't know when. That's the big thing. And the other one is, and this has been confirmed by all my sources, is they're coming out. They don't know what it's going to be called. It's, it's an upgrade to the Spark. They don't know if they're going to call it a Spark 2 or a Spark Pro. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the Spark right now, it has the firmware in it to shoot 4K, but it's on a 2-axis gimbal. And that's the reason DJI didn't decide to go ahead and come out and say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and make the Spark 4K. Well, on a 2-axis gimbal, it probably doesn't work real well. So what I expect to see on the Spark 2 or the Spark Pro is you're going to see the 4K. You're going to see they're going to upgrade it to like a 3-axis gimbal. They're probably going to tweak the runtime a little bit. You're probably going to have new ESCs, quieter props. I don't see a whole lot else changing from that because they want to keep that price point kind of low. A lot of people had asked me, oh, are they going to be going up with that new OcuSync 2.0? Well, from what Rick Smith told me from Drone Valley, he said the boards that for OcuSync, it takes a bigger platform. Like a Mavic 2 can fit it. Obviously, the Phantom 4 Pro V2.0 can fit it. It takes a bigger physical size of the drone to fit that board in it, and the Spark right now at that size can't do that. And that's another thing. They don't want to mess with the Spark the way it is because that frame is very solid. And I know a lot of people who have crashed their Sparks and have been able to get them back up in the air right away because of that frame, the way the frame is built. I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, they need to do it like a Mavic Air and make it more compact and foldable and everything. Well, it would destroy, I think, the integrity of that frame. So that's the other piece of news that I heard. And this is coming from all sources. So, I wouldn't be surprised that with this camera that they're coming out with and the Spark, they'll do a dual launch. They've done dual launches before. The Inspire 2 and the Phantom 4 Pro were a dual launch. That was out in Los Angeles because whenever they do releases in New York, they're geared toward consumers. Whenever they do releases out in Los Angeles, it's more geared toward, I'll say, maybe a prosumer market, but not necessarily, more geared towards the film industry kind of a thing. I would say this kind of an event would probably be held in New York City. That's what they're famous for consumer events, because that kind of a camera and having that kind of a drone, that's more consumer oriented. And the timing is right because the original Spark came out in May of 2017, and we're approaching a 2-year point on the Spark. And I've also seen some other trends too, because I have a pretty large Spark group that I admin, and the membership count is kind of down right now. I'm getting people, but it's no more than 1 or 2 a day, where I had been getting 5 to 10 a day. It's around 2,500 people. So they need something to bump this up. And plus the other thing is, DJI wants to dominate the market. I mean, it's a known fact. They said, you know what, we want to walk all over our competition, so to speak. All right. So what is going to happen here is they've had competition. Hubson's come out with a Xeno. There's I forget who. Dustin did another review on another drone. I think it was called the Z8. I forget who the manufacturer was with that. Show me, I think, a Z8. All these drones are coming in this $299, $399 price segment, which is really kind of nipping and eating away at the Spark. So that's why I think there's a sense of urgency for them to get this out. It's not necessarily, the number of Sparks that they have to sell to get the kind of profit that they would sell from selling a Mavic 2 Pro or Zoom. I mean, you probably have to sell 5 to 10 Sparks to get the kind of profit you would get from selling one Zoom or one Mavic 2 Pro. So, the profit point isn't there, but it's like, because of the price point, you're going to sell those, and you're going to sell lots of those because, everything else that I've seen right now too, the big box stores, the only color that you can get the Spark now in is white. You can't find them in other colors right now. And there are some that are dropping the price to some, I know Idaho's quadcopters, Curtis, or Marcus in Idaho, he just bought one, and I think he got it off of Banggood for like $259, but it didn't have a controller. He had to go out and buy the controller separately. So this is all in. I mean, it's a lot of news that we picked up this week, but it's all good. I mean, things are going to come, and I expect the event for this. I expect it sometime in May. And usually, how DJI works their events, what they do is they'll have they'll send out emails at least 3 to 4 weeks in advance. And the reason they do this is because they get a number of people, not only from the United States, but from overseas come in for these shows. I talked with somebody who was from the Dominican Republic. He was a distributor for DJI down there. And he'll get his email about a week before, say, like I would get my email to go to the show. So got a lot of good things coming up for DJI right now, guys.
Well, hope so.
Which date about you think they're going to announce this?
I think it's going to be towards the end of May, Roger, because that would fit in with like a 2-year kind of a time frame, because it was May 23rd, 2017 is when they came out with the Spark. So right around that time, I'm really expecting it, because summer is going to hit. Here in the States, when Memorial Day hits, that's kind of like, even though it's not officially as far as like the calendar is concerned, summer, people equate that with school being out, and I know a lot of colleges are out by then too. So, that kind of starts the summer season. And when starting the summer season, what other better way to kick it off than with a fun consumer drone like the Spark?
Yeah, true.
Hey, Bill,
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Since there's a lot of FPV flyers here that come to Canadian Drone Hub, is there any chatter amongst the people that are in the know about why DJI is very carefully skirting around FPV flyers and not jumping in full bore, or is there any thought in that area?
Well, that's a good question, Paul. One of the things that I heard, and I know John's on, and John will probably know a lot of this as well too. DJI makes a lot of parts that are used in FPV drones. I mean, you could go off the shelves. I mean, if you were able to find them, you could build yourself one right now. As far as getting a kit, it's a huge segment. It's a huge part of the market right now. But I think the reason that they haven't gotten into it right now, Paul, is they've experienced huge success with the Mavic 2 lineup, the Pro and the Zoom. I mean, these things, they can't keep enough of these in stock. In fact, I had to pull some strings to get a smart controller, because I wanted to get one for my Mavic 2 Pro, because I know it'll also eventually work with my Phantom 4 Pro V2.0. I asked DJI support, and they said, yes, it will work with it. We just need to do a firmware update. So I think the big reason is right now, because sales are so good with the Mavic 2 lineup, that's why, that's kind of been on the back burner. But from everything that I've heard from a lot of my contacts, is that's something that, it's a huge segment there. It is very popular, and it's something that people really enjoy. And I think, DJI is going to get into it. They just got to figure out when the timing is right, because, they're right now, the production for the Mavic 2s are just going, they're going nonstop from what I hear, because dealers can't keep enough of them in stock. Like if you go to big box stores, sometimes they might have to say, like, if you go to Best Buy or Costco, we have some on order. We got some coming in next week, is a lot of times is what you hear, which is a good thing. I mean, that's a win-win for everybody, because, that also means too, with that is, they're going to be in tune to getting firmware updates on a timely basis for the Mavic 2s out. So I think that's your answer for that right now, Paul. I think, we'll see them. It's just a matter of timing.
We're getting big GPS around.
I'd like to add to that, if I could. I think that Bill is definitely right that DJI is going to look at it, but what he said, especially about the fact that the sales of their current drones, their GPS drones, they're just flying off the shelf. FPV, as much as we all love it, as much as it seems like it's a really big market, and it is, it's a big market in its own right, it is probably unfortunately still a fraction of the GPS and aerial photography birds. And with such a small niche market, it's tough for a company like DJI to justify dealing with it right now when it's look, you got to think about the barrier of entry too for just the average person, right? Just to get into FPV. You've got to buy these really expensive Fat Shark goggles. You've got to get a Tyrannus radio. You've got to learn how to program it, and it's not easy. I mean, the DJI stuff is just streamlined. You get it, you get the app, you get the controller, you bind it, you go. You could be up and running in 10 minutes.
True.
But the racing drone stuff, it's almost like you need to be like a drone nerd to get it going. You know what I mean?
I agree. I think a new person entering the drone arena is going to look at DJI first before they do anything FPV, just because it's so complicated, or I just think a new people coming in are going to look at DJI before they will FPV drones. They just will.
You know, probably some other along those lines is, you know, I've encountered guys when we went out flying, FPV guys. They are fantastic. They are knowledgeable. Like John said, you know, you have to be a drone nerd to be able to do FPVs. I mean, it takes a lot of know-how. It takes a lot of skill. And, you know, in the sense that I get now, I don't do FPVs. And I think a big reason for me is, you know, I have, you know, sensory. I mean, it messes with my senses, like with goggles and everything. It's just something that won't work for me. But I know the guys that I talk to, they're passionate, they're diehard. You know, I know John is as well, because we had him on Drone Therapy recently, and we spent a whole night talking about FPVs. You know, it takes a lot to do that. And I think John's right. I think, you know, as far as the segment is concerned, it is a small segment. It is growing, but it is a small segment. And I think that's one thing that that I think is you know, the DJI will look at eventually, but it's just gonna take some time for them.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, DJI actually did look at it at some point. It just wasn't very popular. Bill, have you ever seen the snail propulsion system or the snail racing system that DJI made? It's a few years old now, but if you look it up, they've got racing motors, and we're gonna do this whole thing, but it just ended up falling flat. I think they realized that it just wasn't the right time to try to get into that, and I don't know when it will be.
Yeah, that's a real good question. You know, one of the other pieces of news about DJI that I heard this week is I have a friend named Barry. He's a photo drone journalist, and he's based out of Hawaii, and he was recently over in Hong Kong. You know, and he was actually over at the DJI store. He picked me up a couple of T-shirts and sent them to me. And he, very great guy, very knowledgeable. He actually knows, and he calls him Frank, the owner of DJI. He does know him, which was real interesting. And the piece of news that he shared with me this week was, you know, how many of you guys have heard of the Xdynamics Evolve? It's a brand new drone that just came out. You know, I know a lot of reviewers have just gotten them. I know Captain Drone Steve, he has one. Rick Smith got one. I know, I'm pretty sure Billy Kyle, and I know Ken Dono, Original Dobo, got one too. And, you know, one of the things is, you know, it reminds you of the Phantom series. Now, there was some talk about, you know, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, we've seen the end of the Phantom line, you know, because of the Mavic 2 sales. That's how DJI is going. But yeah, and I do believe that DJI is going to be going to like what I'll call a hybrid right now between, you know, and that's the other thing that's going to be coming out this year. It's going to be you know, a cross between a Mavic 2 Pro and a Phantom 4 Pro. Have the Phantom 4 Pro type of camera with a 1-inch mechanical shutter on it, you know, increased runtime, you know, but still the portability of the Mavic 2. Well, he was telling me from everything that he has heard that because of this Xdynamics Evolve, that, you know, the word that DJI was using is, you know, it's sexy and it's attractive, and it still retains that Phantom style type of quadcopter, and it really attracts a lot of people. Now, some of the things that I've seen with this Xdynamics Evolve that I think are pain points. Well, the first one is, you know, a lot of people, I saw Steve, Captain Drone, do a flight review on it. Its precision landing is off by at least 3 or 4 feet. Okay. It won't come back and land on your pad like a Mavic 2 or a Phantom 4 Pro. Okay. That's out of the way. The other thing is the runtime on it. The runtime is only 21 minutes. I mean, and it's also a very big bird, and it's very loud. One of the huge things is there's absolutely no obstacle avoidance on this drone. So if it's coming at you, you need to get out of the way. Now, it does have LiDAR, which means you could fly it a foot off the ground and it's going to stay a foot off the ground. It's not going to go up and down, but there is no obstacle avoidance. And the big thing right now is this. It's $2,500 US, and it doesn't have the camera on the Mavic 2 Pro is better than the camera on that, which is $1,500. Now, they did say that this is a drone that it has a camera can swap out, say like on an Inspire 2 type of drone. But, you're looking at least another $1,000 to $1,500 whenever they come up with these new cameras to put them in. So, at $2,500. And the other thing I've heard from some other reviewers is it does not handle wind very well. I know when Steve had it up for his flight, it wasn't very windy, but that's one of the other things that I heard. So, they have a lot of fine tuning to do with this, especially on that price point. And, it's not a collapsible drone. It's something, and I think it's bigger, and I think it weighs about 6 pounds. I mean, that's a heavy drone, and it's very loud. So yeah, it's piqued some interest with DJI because of its design, its looks. It's an attractive drone, but I think, the best thing about that is that they have the controller that's with that is enormous. Now, it has a Qualcomm processor like you would see like in a state-of-the-art Samsung phone. It's state-of-the-art. This controller is like, 22nd century. It's fantastic, but it's big and it's bulky again, like the drone. It gets a lot of information on it. You see a lot of things on there, and it looks like, it looks cool. But I think the big thing is, that camera and the price point right now would not make it attractive to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's true. Getting so expensive there it's ridiculous. It's only the big companies can buy them.
The other thing you were saying is that, and I think I caught this, you saying that it's not really completely polished yet either.
Right.
From what you're telling me. See, right there, that already makes me worried about its future because of how much money they want. And I don't know how you feel, but I feel like with an unknown company, and it doesn't matter if it's a toy drone, it doesn't matter if it's a bind to fly racer or anything like that. The first impressions are everything, especially when it gets sent out to all these YouTubers. Because that review video is going to be there for a long time as it is, and that's it. So everything that doesn't work, people are going to see it, and people looking for this thing are not necessarily going to see, oh, it was updated 8 million times. I mean, look at all the Xeno videos out there that are showing all the mess ups with the Xeno that don't even necessarily apply anymore because they've patched it and patched it and patched it, but they're all over the place out there now. So
yeah, John, I would agree with John and Bill. It's an intriguing looking futuristic drone, but if you're going to bring something out in the 2,500 plus price range, it better damn well provide everything that you want to provide, not say, well, we're going to fix things in the future. That'd be like Ferrari bringing out a Testarossa and saying, it's got a little miss and the brakes aren't quite right, but we're going to fix that eventually.
Paul is right on. And I want to also say, is anyone tired of that in just the drone industry and electronics in general? Like, what these companies, they think that they can just release this stuff, and I guess unfortunately some people will just buy it. They will buy it broken, and they use the customer as the beta tester. I really, really wish that would stop in not just the drone world, but consumer electronics as a whole. It
John's
really,
right.
really sucks.
I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Samsung came out with a foldable phone, and its price point's around $2,000. And they had a big news about it this week where apparently they're having issues with the screen folding and it's cracking. And there you go. John's right, because they treat us a lot like the consumers as beta testers, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like that. And and John's right, especially drone industry and tech industry. We're not beta testers. When I get a product, and here's this. I'll say this. When I got my Mavic 2 Pro, I knew that thing was going to work right out of the box. Okay, I knew within reasonable satisfaction when I charged that battery up, and I did make sure the firmware updates were out there. And I clicked those control sticks down. I knew that thing was going to take off, and I knew I was, really not going to have any issues. Although I was the one that ended up finding out that they didn't have precision landing when it almost hit the roof in my very first video.
I remember that.
You probably saw that, but that was a little glitch. And see, the thing with DJI is, they jumped on that right away, and within a matter of weeks, that was taken care of. Which, for a large company like DJI, kudos to them. Now, with and another example on a drone is the Autel Evo. Now, the Evo is a great drone, and Autel's big pain point with me was I had the X-Star Premium. Was their software their hardware is fantastic. Their software leaves a lot to be desired. It didn't take days or weeks. It took months to get out software updates, which is, I'm sorry, you put out a consumer product like this, you got to have tech support to back that up. And they didn't at the time. They're much more responsive with the Evo now, but it still is taking time, and there's still issues that they're still working out. So, your marketing and your tech support need to be in line with one another. And I think that's where the point that is missing with a lot of these companies. And I think even with Samsung, I think Samsung was anxious to get this phone out, and, they probably knew, they probably had found this out there, but they said, you know what, maybe it's a minor issue. Maybe people will gloss over it. We won't have to worry about it. Let's get it out there. And then you can see what just happened this week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I saw that about the Samsung folding phone. When one of my friends was saying, oh, it looks so cool, I told them, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I'm like, let someone else be the beta tester. And then sure enough, it's breaking and it's bad already. So, talking about DJI and whatnot, DJI, because they're so big, you can at least trust them for the most part to address the problems and the issues that these drones have. Like, God, I remember when the Mavic Air came out and it was shaking in cold weather. Does everyone remember that? Stuff like that makes me wonder what the test process is that they could possibly miss something like that. Everyone's Mavic Air was just shaking if it was too cold outside. But at the end of the day, they solved it. It took them what, a week and a half or so, and then they finally solved it. But then, Autel has taken forever to patch some stuff, and I really love. I don't have an Autel, but I love what Autel is doing. They're really trying to be. They're really trying to match DJI in terms of price and performance. But I do wish that they were more responsive when it comes to software issues and fixes to things. They really dropped the ball at some point with the X-Star Premium. They really did.
Oh, wow. your mic went haywire.
My microphone?
Yeah, John, when you stood up, we heard everything. You sound like a broadcast system.
Oh my God. I don't know what's going on with this laptop. It's probably the laptop. Next time I'll get the snowball microphone. I'll still
John's right. One of the other things with Autel is, they were they debuted the Evo at NES or not NES, I'm sorry. CES 2018, and they showed all the models, and they said, well, there was a prototype with a 1-inch sensor, in here, and it was January 2018. Well, they applied for their FCC grant ID, which usually that means, and they have an expiration date on it, and it was kind of open-ended. And I'm like, oh, okay, because I went out to the FCC database. Well, we didn't see the Evo until June. And, here's my thing with things like that. When you announce a product, it should be ready either immediately or within 30 days. Okay. You don't string the consumers along. And I know a lot of people were getting ready to chunk money down on it, put deposits on it. And there was such a big hubbub about putting deposits and who was in line and who was going to get one and all this. And the same thing has happened kind of again with them, when, you know, they came to CES 2019, and, you know, they showed some, there was a battery charging hub. They have a router hub, for lack of a better term, so you could be able to display your Evo's display on a big screen TV. There are some other accessories. And this was in January, guys, and we're getting on the cusp of hitting May, and it's still not out there yet. I mean, you know, when you say something's coming, you need to either have it available immediately or within 30 days at the most. And they're dropping the ball on this. And the other thing is, you know, there were some reviewers out there at CES that asked them, you know, point blank, are you guys coming out with this Evo with the 1-inch sensor? And they said, we're constantly looking to improve our fleet. You know, you got the typical BS response from their reps. You know, they really weren't, they were very evasive in what they say. And I know one of the other things too, one of the big guys who was head of their customer service, he left Autel. I don't know where he ended up going, but he ended up leaving them. So, you know, they got to get in tune. Their marketing needs to get in tune with their production and get these things ironed out, or, you know, DJI will squash them like a bug.
Well, you know, the other thing too is, Bill, is that all these other companies seem to want to nip at the heels of DJI. I mean, that's all they're focused on, is like, how can we do it better? How can we? But yet, DJI went through a similar situation. Remember when they announced the Mavic series, and there were people that were ordering them crazy, and they didn't get them for like 60, 90 days after they did put in their pre-orders, because DJI didn't think it was going to hit that big. And they learned when they brought out the Mavic 2, it's like, boom, you order it, you got it.
Yeah, because I know exactly what you're saying, Paul, because I waited. I didn't get mine until January 2017, because it came out October 2016. I waited till then to get it for that simple reason. And there was a distributor here in Florida. I got it the next day, you know, where I know these guys 30, 60, 90 days were waiting for them. And it was just a huge pain point. So yes, you're right, Paul. DJI did learn their lesson, because when I ordered my Mavic 2 Pro, I got mine within a week. I mean, it was on my doorstep. I mean, no questions asked.
For DJI, it was a long time coming for them to learn their lesson with a lot of stuff. I mean, people forget about some of the stupid stuff that went on, even with the original Mavic Pro, right? The first batch took forever to ship, and and then when they did ship, there was like yellowing of the camera. If anyone remembers that, that was a whole other fiasco. I remember when I first bought my Mavic Pro, I wanted to make sure I was getting a Mavic Pro manufactured in the month of March or February, because I didn't want any Mavics manufactured before that, because if you got one of them, it was a good chance you were going to get one of them with yellow camera or some other first production run defect. So, you know, DJI has definitely learned from that too.
You know, one of the other things that I thought was very funny was there was a guy who put out a video, and, you know, the Mavic Air was the first DJI drone to have internal onboard storage. So, you know, in case you forget your SD card, you know, you're not lost, you're not hosed. Well, this one guy, when he got his Mavic Air, instead of going in there and just clearing out storage and everything, he decided to take a look. And here they were testing the cameras in the Mavic Airs, and there was footage of the factory inside Shenzhen of them moving the drone from station to station. And I just thought that was just the absolute coolest thing. Well, what I did was I asked him, I said, could I use this? And he said, sure, absolutely. So I copied it, and my video is still out there. Well, DJI asked him to take his video down. They never asked me to take mine down, but he told me, he said he was given a very strong reward to do that. So he got compensated. So there was actually got a peek inside the factory and what it looks like, because it's so, you know, their processes there. They don't really like to have a lot of people tour their factories, and they're really kind of you know, secretive, yeah, about that whole process, which I thought was interesting, because you get a peek inside there. And what it reminded me of is, and you guys probably, you know, if you're as old as I am, you remember taking a look when they were building the capsules that were going to the moon. inside these white rooms, and everybody having the white hats on and the gloves, and how it was a dust-free environment. Everything. That's exactly what you saw there. You saw this. You know, it was a pristine environment. It was clean. You know, people wearing gloves. I mean, you know, they're very careful with these electronics, and it was really interesting to see that process. And I still have that video up with that as well. Oh, one of the things last weekend, normally I don't do a lot of what I'll call cinematic videos on my channel, where I just go out and fly for fun, because it's just, you know, I do a lot of tutorials, which is good, and a lot of people like them. So last week I met up with one of the other bucket list boys, Ron Brown, and we went down to one of the beaches here in Florida where he and his wife were staying. It was about an hour away for us, which was great. And there was an abandoned fishing pier, and I had a absolute total blast going out there and filming that, and taking the Mavic 2 Pro out there. And we just, I mean, it was great. And I have another video coming up with that. I did some hyperlapses of the sunset that night, and they came out fantastic. And I also did something with a hyperlapse I never did before, was I flew towards the sun, but the speed was set at about 1.5 to 2 miles an hour. So it's really slow, and it's going to be a great video. I'm going to be getting that together here in the next couple of days and getting that out. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm going to try to get out more and do that. It's just, you know, when you work full time, you only have weekends to really be able to go out and fly and do things. And a lot of times, you know, I'm doing my, you know, tutorials in my series, and I don't have a chance to go fly for fun. Well, I jumped at the chance last weekend. We did that. And, you know, Ron's actually thinking about moving down to Florida. And Ron, if you see this, I really hope you do move down to Florida, because absolutely had a blast. And Bill Thomas was saying he was possibly going to be vacationing in Florida sometime this year too. So I would definitely look forward to getting together with him, because, you know, we have a great show. We have a lot of fun on Drone Therapy. You know, Bucket List Boys, you know, we're all the same age. And, you know, if you watch towards the ends of the show sometime, we'll probably digress to talking about concerts from the 70s or cars from the 70s. And we just have a good time. We just have a lot of fun. You know, I know we had John on recently, and, you know, John's a great guy. We just had a blast with him. And it's a great time. We have a lot of fun. We thank you guys for watching us.
Yeah. So Coach Jones is on. Give your time out there, Bill.
Yeah, it's on 8:30 on Wednesday nights, 8:30 Eastern on Wednesday nights. We're on. My show's been on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, and I've been doing. I got a real nice compliment. Curtis Dart, who runs the Drone Owners Network, who's on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. He does a fan. He said, Bill, he says, you're a one-man band. You do most of that stuff by yourself. You know, you do your production, you do your editing, you do everything. And he said, you do fantastic. He said, I could never do that. He works with a number of people besides Randy and Tommy Polo, you know, to put together the great shows that they do. And you know, for me, it's really not that hard. You know, I find my clips, I find what I'm going to do. You know, I type up an agenda for the night, and we go over it. And usually when I have guests on, I get some good views. Well, when I had Rick Smith on from Drone Valley, that was my highest watched and highest ranked episode that I've had on since I've been doing them for 2 years. I've had over 600 views on that. Unbelievable comments on it. People like Rick is such a great guy. If you guys ever get a chance to meet him in person, please do so. He's as great as you see on his videos. I absolutely, both Valerie and I, we've met him at least 3 or 4 times. You know, every time is fantastic, and it's great talking to him, especially off camera. I mean, you know, he's the same person off camera as he is on camera. He's very likable, he's very friendly, and I just really enjoy getting together with him. He's supposed to be coming back down to Florida soon. His daughter works in the Orlando area, so that'll be nice to get together with him again. We always have a great time flying with him. He's got in fact, he gave me the chance to fly, and this is something else I wanted to talk about, and it kind of reminded me, was the Parrot Anafi. They came out with their thermal drone this week, and you know, it's created a lot of news about that. But I actually got to fly. Rick has an Anafi, and I got to fly that. and it really impressed me out of the gate. Its size, its portability, you know, the app was great on it. But the thing that I really liked was how responsive this drone was. You know, when you're flying forward and you take your finger off that stick, it almost comes to a complete dead stop, and that's because of how light it is. And the camera being able to rotate 180 degrees like that, your field of vision on that was just insane. It was off the charts. And with their new firmware updates that they've done, there's been a resurgence. And I know some places, I guess Amazon, you could pick one up this week. And I don't know if it's still on sale. And it was like $450, which is crazy considering, you know, they were originally like what, $650, $700. So yeah, that's another drone that's, I think people are kind of starting to take another look at, because they're coming out with the Anafi Thermal, which is they're going to retail that for $1,900, which they're aiming that at the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual. And I actually had a chance to test the Dual for a few days. It was on loan to me from Florida Drone Supply. And while I was impressed with it, with the thermal function up from the FLIR, their regular camera left a lot to be desired. It wasn't even as good as, you know, people said it was the camera almost similar to the one that was on the Zoom. I'd say it was not up to even par on that one. It's a great tool for first responders, for firefighters, but you know, in terms of being able to, for practical use, for you know, for fun and enjoyment, you know, that's not the kind of drone you're going to get cinematic and do great aerials with. That's the kind of drone that's geared toward first responders. And I know a lot of people went out there and bought them. Now, it also has the same options as it does with the Enterprise.
Bill, I've heard rumors amongst the first responders that they're being told that maybe in the next year they're going to come out with a Enterprise dual zoom. They're going to replace that other camera with the zoom camera and have the thermal.
That would be perfect, Paul, because, you know, one of the things that is always that I've said about that was, you know, with the Enterprise themselves, you know, it has that zoom camera, which is fantastic, which is what you need. And I actually tried that loudspeaker, and that loudspeaker is very loud. It's very clear. So, you know, and I know, and I saw a film, or saw a video. They used it in New York City in a hostage situation, and you know, they helped alleviate the situation with this, and were able to, you know, first responders, which I think is great. And and you're right, they need to come out on the dual with a camera like that, because, you know, what happens is you can combine both of the cameras when you're with the dual. I didn't have a lot of chance to play around with this, but you can combine them so you can actually see the outlines and shapes of things when you're doing that, when it's not just strictly on the FLIR image, which is nice if you're looking at it, you know, if you're trying to find, say, a lost person to do search and rescue. But, you know, the way it is right now, it's not very detailed. But boy, if they combine that zoom camera with that, Paul, that would be absolutely fantastic.
And I agree with you 100%. Bill, I don't know if you know this or not, but I have both Enterprises. I have the regular Enterprise and I have the dual. And I agree with you. If that dual had a zoom like on the Enterprise, that'd be a home run.
It is. You're right. And, you know, and you figure, you know, a lot of people were balking about the price point, you know, but I said, you know, I was telling everybody and trying to remind people, I said, you know, this isn't aimed at consumers here, guys. All right. This is aimed at first responder organizations. And, you know, and a lot of your smaller first responders in more rural areas could be able to afford something like this more easily than a $30,000 Matrice.
Yep.
You know, getting something like it's a tool that's showing how, you know, it saves lives like that. And if you guys want to get a chance to, you know, I talked at length about this with Romeo Dersher, who I had on one of my shows on Tuesday night. Romeo is a fantastic guy. He was one of the best guests I think that I've ever had on from outside of drone reviewers. He's incredibly knowledgeable, friendly, and, you know, that's his whole thing. He's director of public safety integration for DJI, and, you know, he was all about, you know, having, you know, he told me a stat which was incredible, that over the last year and a half, 2 years, I think drones have saved probably 125, 150 people around the world. And, you know, like I said, that's 150 people that get another day to live, which I think is fantastic. Because we see so much bad out there. We see most recently a juvenile they caught him flying a drone over Fenway Park over in Boston, and it was a Phantom 4 Pro. And what they're going to do and how they're going to press charges, who knows? But we hear a lot of stories like that. We hear about the incidents at Gatwick and in New Jersey, and all these other things. I like hearing these, and I will always. That's one of the things I go out on Twitter every day. Is I'll use that hashtag drones for good when I see things like what they did. For example, DJI drones were used over the fire in Notre Dame, over in Paris. And it helped first responders out there. So, again, drones for good. That's a thing that I really like to get out there and tell people about is, don't focus on these stories a lot. When you see these juveniles pulling a stunt like they did over Fenway Park, focus on, these stories about people that were lost that are getting found. Focus on how the first responders used drones for good and being able to assess a situation at Notre Dame and get that taken care of quickly. Or that could have been a real, just unmitigated disaster over there.
Oh God.
Yeah, let me say something else too. You were talking about the Gatwick incident and the recent incident with the drone in New Jersey too. Everybody definitely has to be careful with like the news that they come across, because there's a lot of fake news when it comes to the drone stuff. And the police have even like admitted that there may not have been any drone at all at Gatwick, and all of that was which is terrible, because all of that was such a mess. So many people's holidays were messed up because of something that honestly may not have even happened, according to what I read. And even in New Jersey, when they were talking about that drone sighting at Newark Airport recently, that wasn't actually confirmed. No one could actually confirm it. And there's just so much of that, and it's really killing the image of drones. So the more positive stuff that we can get out there, the better for everybody. But with stuff like that, it feels terrible just reading it, because that's the news that the average person gets more than the good stuff. Yeah. That's actually a problem with the whole news cycle, but that's another issue. Like, all the bad stuff gets more views than the good stuff does, because it's the bad stuff sells. That's just my opinion.
Well, I put out a video, and I don't know if you guys have seen it or not. It was from the University of Dayton, did a test, and I think it was a Phantom 3 that they took, and they put it in this. They projected it against a Mooney M200 aircraft. Now they shot it out of this device, for lack of a better term, at over 200 miles an hour. All right, and I first of all, when I heard that, I laughed, because okay. We all know that the top speed on a Phantom 3 was Pro or Advanced. Okay, so that was ridiculous right off the bat. And number two, the other thing is, let's say a Mooney's coming in on approach. Now, I'm not a private pilot, but I do have some knowledge about that. Most of them fly at what, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet. They're under 10,000 feet planes. Okay, so drones, number one, they're not going to be up at that altitude. All right. That's not going to happen. And the other thing is, if they're coming in on an approach, that flaps are down, they've reduced speed, they're trying to land. Okay. So if a Phantom 4 or a Phantom 3 is coming along, it's not going to be coming along that impact is not going to be real. It wasn't a realistic scenario. My views shot off the charts with that, but my whole thing was that this was University of Dayton never really responded to anything. I asked them questions. They never got back to me. This was not a real world test. This was, again, you coined the term that John was, it was more along the lines of fake news, because the fake news sells, and it gets people looking at things like this. And I talked a little bit about this with Romeo. I talked about, not only incident Gatwick, but the one in Newark, where these pilots said that they saw them. And I'm like, okay, guys, all right, realistically, think about it. You're on approach, you're coming in, you're slowing down, and you're seeing drones up in the air at what, 2,000 or 3,000 feet. I mean, come on here. I mean, let's be realistic about this. Because it's not. Don't create something where there isn't. And that's one of my parents. God bless them. One of the things that they always say. don't make something out of nothing. And that's exactly what's happening here because it sells.
Bill, Mike, got a question for you.
I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. I'm just tired of seeing all these drone sighting reports, and the XJet channel. Bruce, he does great breakdowns whenever anything like this happens because he really digs into that. I don't know if you guys have seen Bruce over at the XJet channel, and he did an awesome video on the whole Gatwick incident, and it's just really unfortunate because us as whatever kind of content you produce as a drone enthusiast, you know, how do we deal with this problem when news like that spreads like wildfire and it hurts the image of drones in just seconds? I don't really know what to do about it. It's what I'm afraid of is it's just going to keep happening more and more and more until finally they just use it as ammo to regulate everybody out of existence.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid of is the end game.
Kim, you're up.
Go ahead, Kim.
Because the snowball effect with that fake I'm getting them.
Mike Kelly had a question for Bill a while ago. I'm going to try and find it. Okay. Is the dual controller mod the only update for the version 0.400?
Yes, that was the only update. You know, and you know, when I heard that come out, and that's great. Now, see, you know, what a lot of people, and I actually put out the video. I actually put out and I posted the link for DJI's tutorial on doing it with the Mavic Pro because they didn't want to do one on the Mavic 2 Pro, but it's the same way to get both the controllers hooked up. Now, you know, what's interesting about that update is, I mean, they said they did it was just some very minor stuff, the other stuff, but that was the major part of that update. Well, you know, one thing for me is, I mean, Original Dobo put out a great video about it, and he did talk about it at length, Ken. But, you know, one of the things for me was, this is great if you're in a 2-person operation. If you're using this to say, if you're doing a real estate shoot, or if you're doing roof inspections, or if you're, just trying to get, you need another person to work the camera and you want to fly the drone. Okay. That's what this is perfect for. I mean, it's kind of gearing it towards like the Inspire 2, where you have the 2 controllers and one's operating the aircraft, the other one is operating the camera, and it's the same instance here, which I think is a good thing. For most consumers, when I'm out there flying for cinematic, for my own fun, boy, would it be nice to have somebody to do that? Yeah, it absolutely would be nice. But you know what? For what I want to do, and even for my cinematic stuff, I can get it done by myself. Now, if you're in business, if you have a partner with you, absolutely, it would be fantastic. But for most consumers out there, it's not an update that's going to mean a lot. However, this is going to be also applicable to this DJI Smart controller as well, too, with the Mavic 2. So, that's interesting because, I've got one coming and I'm real anxious to get it. And, because I've heard so much good about it. I have a friend over in the UK who, he actually did a video, and I posted it on my channel because I didn't, they weren't available in the States yet. And he got it, and I wanted to get a video out about it. So he actually did a review, sent it to me on Dropbox, and I posted it on my channel. And he absolutely loves it. And from everything I saw, I just loved it as well too. A lot of people are knocking the Smart controller because of the size, but I'm saying, you know what? You have everything right there. You don't have cables to hook up. You can get your drone in the air in seconds. And one of the other things that I saw this week was, and this may be of interest to you, I don't think to you, Paul, is that they're working on getting it ready for the Enterprise series because, for first responders to be able to get that up there, seconds really do mean lives. And if they can, pull up in their truck, get the drone out, the props are already on, batteries in, you fire up the battery, you turn on the controller, you're good to go. I mean, you don't have to get your iPad out, get a cable, hook it up, fire everything. It's good to go. You're ready to, and you're up in the air in seconds with something like that, which is fantastic.
So, Bill, I left it. Oh, sorry. I had a question for Bill for when he gets that set up. I was wondering if say the primary controller flies out of range and the secondary this person with the secondary controller is somewhere else. Will the secondary controller pick up after the primary controller disconnects? That's a question that I have, because I brought this up on Billy Kyle's channel, that like you could have pilots in two very different, very far away places handling the same drone, and you could I was thinking that could actually still be used to do some pretty long distance kind of flying, but still stay within the line of sight of a pilot requirements. That was just an idea I had. I left a comment about that on Billy's channel. I was just curious about how that works.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. That's something, you know, that I would like to find out myself. You know, and one of the things, you know, and this is a good thing for questions like this, and this is what I tell everybody, you know where I get my, you know, a lot of people say, you know, you got connections with DJI, you have connections. I said, you know what I do, guys? I go out to, I'm on Twitter, and I go out to DJI support and I ask them, and I'll tell you what, if you use, you know, you don't go out there and be abrasive with them. If you're kind, polite, and ask questions nicely, they get back to you, and they respond very quickly, because when it's out there in a public forum, you know, they want to get this thing addressed, especially if it's an issue. They jump on it right away, and they responded right away. You know, I posted my video about precision landing, and I said, you know, I think this is something you guys need to look into, because, you know, I almost crashed, and they got back to me right away. They said, you know, we're going to team, we're going to work on this. You know, we'll get back to you. And they kept me, they updated me on a weekly basis on this, which I thought was, I mean, it just as a regular, you know, I'm a content creator, you know, but, you know, not only that, you know, I'm a voice out there, and I can get news out there about this. And, you know, that's just a general rule of thumb. And this is not only with DJI seems to be the most responsive, you know, Autel, not so. I mean, you know, probably more on Facebook than on Twitter, but I really like how DJI responds on Twitter. They're very responsive to that. So a DJI support, you know, is where you find them. So that would be a great place to go out there and ask questions, just like what John said. You know, is this something? And they could, you know, and they'll look at it and they'll let you know. They'll get back to you. They're very good about that.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The Mavic. When you start up your Mavic, does it go to a Wi-Fi enhancement box to tell you that your Wi-Fi is weak, that you should update it or improve it? Because the Phantom 3 does that. Every time you open it up, it comes up with a box saying your Wi-Fi is weak, you should update it, blah, blah, whatever. And the reason for that is DJI told me that if you find your Phantom, that some guy in the bushes over there with a Phantom controller can steal your drone. Is that
that's true. But the thing with this is, with the original Mavic Pro, it had OcuSync 1.0, and that's a whole different ball game in terms of you know, the electronics, and as far as radio signals are concerned. I have a lot of people don't know, and I haven't broadcast this, but I'm an amateur extra ham radio operator. I don't have any equipment, because at the time I got into ham radio, I also started getting into drones, and drones seem to take precedence over ham radio. So I sold what little ham radio equipment I had. But what I do know is this, is because of that OcuSync 2.0 or 1.0 is a completely different system, and it's completely different in terms of the signals. And what they did with OcuSync 2.0 is it goes between two different bands, and it checks to see which one has the better signal strength, and it goes with that. And that's the kind of drone that you're not going to find what you described will take place, where somebody can steal a signal. I think it's the same thing with a Mavic Pro. I don't think you're going to have that happen, because it's really not Wi-Fi based. It's OcuSync 1.0 based, which is it's a completely different type of technology.
Yeah, exactly, Bill. That's the reason I got rid of my original Inspires, because they were running the old system, and OcuSync was much more secure, and radio interference was happening all the time with my Inspires. And now that I've got the Mavic 2s and the Enterprise models, I don't get any of that at all.
You see, what was real interesting, Paul, and that's a great point. You know, when I got my Phantom 4 Pro V2.0, one of the first tests that I did with it was, now, you know, how do you test radio signals, and how do you test OcuSync 2.0 was one of my big questions. And it came to me like a light. How I test it is to do a YouTube live stream, because when the live stream comes back, that's coming back, it's not at 1080, it's 720, and everybody understands that. But that is a great test of signal strength. And I had it out to about 1,500 feet and I realized, I didn't get into the menu. There's a menu setting besides beginner that limits the amount of feet away that your drone can go. And I didn't know it. And it was like set at 1,500 feet. So I had to go in there and fix that. But the signal strength, even at 2,000, now I know my video showed latency on the Phantom 4 Pro V2.0. Well, I did some other tests with it and I had absolutely no latency with it. But the thing is, and I tell people, don't look at the latency, look at how it is like a 2,000 feet away. Can you see that clearly? Is it a clear image out there? And the answer was yes. So it's a lot of things. People get confused with, your video was choppy, there's something wrong with your drone. Guys, I had to put a big disclaimer out there. I said, this wasn't from the SD card. Okay. This wasn't taken by the drone. This was from the transmission image that was sent out to YouTube, which is at 720p, and there's going to be latency in it. But don't focus on the latency. Focus on what you see at 2,000 feet when I'm out there, when I'm 2,000 feet away, and it was clear as a bell. It really was.
That's true, Bill. That's true. You can see it go like this because you're going beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
The recording is perfect, and you would think that you would see all that break up and all this, but it happened.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that I found out quickly about the Phantom 4 Pro is, with the gimbal, I kind of have to tilt that down a little bit if I'm going over 20 miles an hour with it, say, and I'm starting to get fast, because you'll get props in the shots. And one of the ways, and I have a friend of mine who's he was a sports journalist, a photojournalist for NBC Sports for years, lives out in California. He taught me a trick. He said, what you can do is, fly out to the point that you want to go to. Normally, don't record, but then when you get out there, hit record, pull your stick back, and go backwards. Okay, because you will never get the props in the shots when you go backwards. And then just in post, whether Adobe Premiere or whatever you use to do your post processing, you can easily correct that so it looks like you're flying forwards. He said that way you'll never get props in your shots.
Oh, that's cool.
Good one.
Drone Pool, do you have any questions or anything? Are you still here?
Oh, it popped off for me.
Oh.
I think he popped out.
Yeah.
He was having an egg. He was having an egg sandwich.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, I've got one thing. Next time you're eye to eye with Romeo Dersher, and you're a smart enough guy, by his response, just say, how is the development of the Enterprise Duo Zoom coming?
Okay.
And you will know by his response.
I actually have his email address, Paul, and I will email him and ask him that question. And you know what? He's very good about that. And he said, to me, he told me, he said, no question is off limits. He said, now I may say I may not be able to comment on it, but he said, ask the questions, because what I do when I have guests on my show is I'll send them out a list of questions that I'm going to ask them for the week. I mean, Sally French was my first guest. I had her on. I've had Billy Kyle on. I have Rick Smith on. I'll send them the questions ahead of time. And it was great because he was the first one that came back to me, and he said, Bill, there's no question that's off limits. He said, ask away. And he says, you need something, if you have one of your subscribers or viewers or friends needs to get a question answered, send me an email, ask me, and I'll get back to you. So, Paul, that's one thing you can count on. He will get back, and that's what he's very good about that.
Yeah, because Bill, when I go out and demo the two Enterprises to local first responders, and they see the one which is the Enterprise with the zoom and everything, and they say, "Oh, that's great if we're looking for something," and then I show them the Duo, and it says, "But here's how you cut through and you get the heat, and you can also use it for fire and everything else." And the first question out of the mouth is, "Well, how do I zoom that?" Well, it's not there.
Yeah, that's great. I will send him an email, and like I said, he's very good, Paul, about getting back to me on that. That's one thing that I've been real impressed with him. He's one of the better people that I've had contact with. Now, I have several other contacts with DJI, and they're good, but you know, they have a tendency to not get back right away. Romeo usually gets back within at least a day or two with me with that, which I think is great, because if you know him, he's all over the place. I mean, you know, he'll be in California one day, he'll be over in Shenzhen the next day, he'll be over in Europe. You know, he literally, I said, so how many days a week are you actually in your office? Lives near San Jose, and he just laughed. You know, he said he's, you know, maybe a couple of days in a week he's in his office, but most of the time he's out on the road. And what's real neat about him too, Paul, and I think everybody can get a real appreciation for that. When they had those wildfires out in California, he actually went out with the first responders and was flying with them. And they did a lot of surveying of these areas. Now, he went out with a Phantom 4, you know, Pro RTK, the mapping drone, to remap these areas where it's devastated. And he actually said, you know, he had to get debriefed and counseled and stuff, because you realize, you know, these areas that he was flying over, these were people's homes and their livelihoods and everything, and they were gone. I mean, you saw the street there, but that's all that was there. There was nothing left. It was just this vast emptiness. But these mapping tools are fantastic. And, you know, he also went out and worked, you know, active wildfires as well. So, you know, he's just not a guy who will come out, you know, he walks the walk and talks the talk, as they say.
Sure.
Cool.
Paul, do you have any questions for Bill?
Yeah, I'd like to ask him one question real quick. I was talking with Paul earlier about upgrading from the Phantom 3 standard, what he thought would be the best bang for the buck in the Mavic series. But you had mentioned earlier when you were with Ron that you flew the Parrot Anafi and were kind of impressed with that. Would that be a viable option to upgrade from the Phantom 3 to the Parrot Anafi?
You know, that's a great question. You know, for the price point, I don't think you can beat it. Now, you know, one of the things with the Parrot Anafi that I tell people about is you have to realize, you know, you don't have any obstacle avoidance on that either. You know, that's a real, you know, that's a pain point with a lot of people, because, you know,
Right.
you kind of get, it's kind of like, I'll akin to training wheels when you're learning to ride a bike. And, you know, you take the training wheels off, they're not there anymore. They're not going to help you. And that's the way it is with the Anafi. It's just not there, and they don't have that in there. It does have a, you know, as far as, you know, controlling it, it is super responsive and super easy to control, you know, but it is very light. And, you know, I don't know how it would hold up in a crash. You know, and that would be my only stipulation with that is, you know, it's a drone to look at, especially for the price point. But for me, you know, the safety factor of having, you know, not only obstacle avoidance, but, you know, the Mavic 2, and I think, you know, Paul knows this as well, it has what's called APAS in it. And, you know, it will fly around when you have APAS engaged, it will avoid obstacles on purpose. You know, there's sensors in there to help you with that, the cameras and everything on board the system. You know, now granted, you know, you're looking at spending, instead of spending $600, you know, you jump up to a Zoom, which is around $1,200, you know, but you have to realize, you know, the bang for the buck that you're getting with this.
Right.
You know, and to me, you know, people ask me, you know, what drone do you like more, one than the other, the Phantom 4 Pro V2.0 or the Mavic 2 Pro? I say yes. You know, it's like, here's my other answer. You have to pry my cold dead hands off of both of them. All right. Because, you know, those are drones that I'm probably never going to give up or never sell, because they're just incredible platforms. They really are. And that's the thing is, you know, when you're looking at a lower end drone, you know, and the Anafi is something you should give consideration to. But for somebody like you, who I know is an experienced pilot, I don't see you having a problem with it, because you're not on purpose going to be, you know, if you're flying near trees or hills or mountains or things like that, you know, you have situational awareness, you know where you're at. You know, for inexperienced people, I would say absolutely not. Get a Spark, because you're going to have some of that capabilities on there. It's at a lower price point, but you do have some of that obstacle avoidance there in some of those sensors and warnings to let you know that. But for experienced pilots, an Anafi is a perfect choice.
Yeah, and the Spark is much more rugged, I would say, wouldn't you, Bill?
Oh yeah, because like I said, I've seen people crash their Sparks, you know, and within 15 minutes they were back up in the air. They were literally dusting them off, getting dirt out of the props and in the motors, and, you know, getting a can of air dust and blowing away, and you're good to go.
The only thing I'm really not happy with what I've seen with the Spark is the flight time.
Yeah.
You know,
Other
that's one of the things.
Consider it.
You know, you can
Kim.
realistically expect about 15 minutes, maybe 16 out of a Spark. You know, because the real world test, I think the specs say 20 minutes, but you're never really going to. 20 minutes is if you take the drone up, put it 15 feet in the air, and just let it sit there. You'll probably get 20 minutes. But
Right.
with wind speed, air resistance, that kind of thing, that'll never happen.
But it's the same way with the Mavic 2s also. We're supposed to get 31 minutes, and what we get 27, 28.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. I mean, what you see, what's advertised is a perfect real world scenario. It never have a perfect scenario, and you never see it. You'll see the 27, which is great because when we went out flying last week, I filmed that video that I did. Flying out to the pier and back, and then also doing the hyperlapse. I was on one battery, and it ended up, I got it down to, it was at 20%, and it just was, my warnings were going off like crazy, and it, I hit return to home. But yeah, that's what you're looking at as far as and that's one of the things I wish they would do with the Spark is increase that battery life. The only thing, my big thing about the Spark, my biggest negative about the Spark is the battery location on it. Because I know early on, some people had some issues in flight with the battery falling out of the Spark.
They were just shoving them in and not listening for the double click.
Exactly. And they had,
battery comes shooting out.
Exactly. And people needed to get educated on that, Paul. And until they got educated on that, it's like, guys, you got to listen for that click. And I mean, that's something that's on all DJI drones, whether it's a Phantom or a Mavic or the Spark, there's that double click on there on that battery. You need to know that's in there. Sometimes, even with the double click, does it happen? It can, but 9 times out of 10, it won't. You get that clicked in there and you get it in there. It's solid. I mean, I had my Spark. I absolutely loved it. And I think my thing with the Spark was for me was, that runtime. I mean, it's a kicker. You're up there, you're getting some great footage. And then, you're hearing the beep, 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 you're at 25% battery and you got to come back kind of stuff. And it's like, oh man, that's a kicker.
When you're in GPS mode and you're trying to fly with it and you're moving, it is so killer slow.
Well, there's a way, I don't know if you know this or not, but you can adjust the speed on that to get it out of where it's not going so slow. With GPS mode. Take a look at my channel because I probably have about 30 or 40 videos on the Spark that I did tutorials. And it's very easy to correct that.
Oh,
I noticed that when I had.
It's in your settings, right?
Yeah, it's real easy.
When I flew Rogers for the first time and I went across the road, just going across the road, there was no cars coming. By the time I got to the other side, I was afraid that truck was going to nail it. I was worried that I was missing for traffic, and I just sat there going, "How long is it going to take to get across the road, man? This thing is slow as hell."
Well, guys, I got some things I gotta get handled here. Plus, just got over a nasty sinus infection. I had to go to the doctors the other day, and they actually put me on a second round of antibiotics and steroids. And actually, I got shots, which kind of surprised me for the first time. I haven't gotten shots in the doctors in a long time, but they weren't the shots in the arm that you normally get. They had to, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I said. It was more. It was especially noticeable at night when I would roll over in bed. Okay.
That long. Why did they have to strike the bone with it?
Yeah, exactly. Guys, I want to wish everybody a happy Easter. Have a safe holiday.
You too.
It was great talking with you. Thanks so much for giving me a few minutes here this morning. Everybody, you guys take care.
Have a good
Lots of really great, lots of really interesting info. So thank you for sharing it. Great conversation.
Great seeing all of you. Take care. Again, I'd like to thank Roger and everyone at Canadian Drone Hub for letting me be a guest on their show. I'll drop a link in the description so you can check them out if you haven't already. Question of the day. What did you think of this week's DJI update and rumors? Let me know in the comments section below. If you like the content from today's video, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and tell others about the channel. Also, be sure to check out my Facebook page where I do post daily updates regarding the drone and drone industry and anything DJI, Autel, or Parrot related. Also, be sure to check out my Twitter account where I do post daily updates and Instagram as well. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, it's a great day to fly.